Have you ever thought you knew someone inside and out, only to realize how little you truly understood? Imagine this. You pour your heart into a marriage, building trust, only to find it shattered in an instant. That's where I found myself, planning a future together, while she was opening doors I didn't even know existed. This story dives deep into betrayal, self-discovery, and finding a way to rebuild from the ashes of a broken relationship. But in the end, this journey is about more than loss. It's about the strength to start fresh with purpose and a renewed sense of self. Stick with me, because you won't believe the twists and turns that led me here. When my wife decided to open up our marriage, without even mentioning it to me, I was completely blindsided. One evening, I could sense something was off, but I never could have guessed what was coming. Her intention seemed clear, but the impact on me? Devastating. I'd always thought we were grounded in trust and mutual satisfaction, but suddenly, it was like I'd been living in a completely different story. It wasn't just that she wanted to explore outside connections. It was the way she'd done it, as if a simple conversation was unnecessary. That was the first hit, and little did I know, more shocks were just around the corner. Months later, the real bombshell dropped. She had contracted an STI and, as if that weren't enough, she was pregnant. Nothing could have prepared me for the whirlwind of emotions that erupted inside me. Betrayal, anger, disappointment, all crashing down like a tidal wave. It felt like the very ground I was standing on had been ripped from under me, and the trust one thought we had, just a distant memory. It wasn't just a confession she'd made. It was the start of a completely different reality, one I didn't sign up for. The satisfaction and stability I thought we shared now felt like illusions, slipping through my fingers. The worst part was realizing my perspective never even seemed to matter. How could she just move forward without us even discussing it? The life I thought we had was starting to feel more like a facade, and I was left questioning everything. I wanted to surprise her with a special evening, a celebration of us, or so I thought. A cozy dinner, a bottle of her favorite wine, and even a diamond necklace as a token of my commitment. Little did I know, the evening would turn into something I'd never forget, but for all the wrong reasons. Just as I presented the necklace, her face softened in a way I'd never seen before. Not with love, but with something like guilt. Then, without warning, she dropped the bomb. She wanted to explore life outside our marriage, she said, as if it was a simple shift in plans. That one sentence changed everything. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. Sitting there, trying to make sense of what she was saying, I felt the whole evening shift. The necklace, once a symbol of love, now felt heavy, almost mocking. I could barely focus as she explained her intentions, talking about personal satisfaction and freedom as if those words justified her decision. I found myself replaying every memory, wondering what I'd missed, how I'd been so unaware. All those moments I thought were meaningful, all the gestures, suddenly felt hollow. I had questions, so many questions, but no words. Yet there she was, calmly defending her needs, her intentions, as if I'd be all right with it all. It felt surreal, sitting across from her, our dinner now cold, while she talked about discovering herself beyond us. My head was spinning. How did we get here? I knew this conversation would haunt me, pulling me into a maze of confusion and disappointment. And worse, there was a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Sitting across from her, I couldn't wrap my mind around what she was saying. She spoke with calm determination about needing space to find herself outside our marriage, as though this urge for exploration was something I should just accept. I could hardly keep up. How could she talk so easily about something that tore me apart? She said she wanted a chance to grow, to experience a new kind of satisfaction, as if that could somehow fit into our life together. I searched her face, trying to understand how we had ended up here. But each word only deepened the ache. My mind was racing, I wanted to understand her intentions, but I couldn't shake the hurt. The trust one thought we shared now seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by this new version of her I didn't recognize. I asked her how she could keep such a huge part of herself hidden, and she just looked at me unflinching. Her calmness felt like a wall between us, blocking out everything I'd thought we were. Did our marriage mean so little to her that she could set it aside like this? The questions bubbled up, but her responses just circled back to her own needs. For a moment, I considered just walking out, leaving the whole conversation behind. But I stayed, torn between my love for her and this new reality she'd thrust upon me. How was I supposed to move forward knowing she saw our life together as incomplete? 1,000 scenarios played out in my mind, but nothing seemed to bring clarity. Instead, I sat there, silently wondering if my feelings still mattered to her at all, or if this conversation had already made that painfully clear. Amid the chaos of my crumbling marriage, I met Andrea. She was nothing like the whirlwind my life had become. Calm, thoughtful, with a quiet warmth that immediately put me at ease. It wasn't planned meeting her, but there was something grounding about her presence. We connected over casual conversations at first, but each time we talked, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, like I was finally being seen again. Andrea offered me a kind of attention and respect that I hadn't felt in a long time, something that left me both relieved and confused. As we spent more time together, I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone else. She listened, truly listened, as I shared the turmoil and uncertainty that had taken over my life. There was no judgment in her gaze, only empathy and understanding. I felt a connection that wasn't about romantic intentions or filling a void, but was simply about being there for each other. Andrea made me feel like my emotions mattered, like I had a safe place to land when everything else felt so uncertain. This unexpected companionship quickly became my anchor. But there was a new tension too, a soft, unspoken awareness that grew each time we met. It was something I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I tried. I found myself torn, caught between the loyalty to my marriage and the possibility of something new, something that felt real. Andrea didn't push for more, and yet her quiet presence was an invitation to rediscover myself. Deep down, I wondered if life was offering me a fresh start, or if I was just drifting further from the person I used to be. After everything that happened, accepting this new version of my life felt like an impossible task. There was a constant clash between my love for her and the betrayal I couldn't shake. Nights were the worst, lying awake, replaying her words, reliving the moment she told me she wanted more than I could give. I had once believed our relationship was a source of mutual satisfaction, built on understanding and trust, but now all that seemed shattered. The thought of an open marriage felt unnatural to me, yet she seemed to believe it was perfectly reasonable. In quiet moments, I found myself seething with anger and sadness, emotions that I never expected to feel toward her. I couldn't understand how she could move forward, as if this was a minor shift in our relationship. My mind kept circling back to her intentions, wondering if there was something I had missed, or if I had simply been naive. The memories of us, our laughter and shared dreams, now felt like fragments of a life that didn't exist anymore. There were days I barely recognized myself, struggling to keep up with the person I was supposed to be for her. With Andrea in my life, the divide became even more apparent. Here was someone who seemed to value and respect me without the complexity and pain that now clouded my marriage. And yet, walking away from my wife felt like a betrayal of a life I'd worked so hard to build. I was caught between two worlds, one of painful familiarity and one of potential peace. Each day felt like a balancing act, with my heart and mind pulling in two very different directions. Eventually, I couldn't take the silence or the unanswered questions any longer. One evening, I confronted her, laying it all on the table. I told her that if she wanted other men in her life, she'd need to leave the home we'd built together. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, caught between who we were and who she now wanted to be. Her reaction surprised me. She hesitated, torn between this new desire of hers and the life we'd shared. I could see a flicker of regret, but it was buried under her determination. This wasn't a simple phase, and I was beginning to see that. Our exchange was tense, emotions high, and for the first time, I realized just how deep the divide had become. She tried to reason with me, bringing up her intentions for self-discovery and freedom, but I couldn't find any comfort in those words. I had no problem with her growth. What troubled me was how little she seemed to care about the impact of her choices on us. As she finally agreed to leave, an odd mix of relief and sadness settled over me. It was as if I'd lost a part of myself, but in that loss, a hint of clarity emerged. As she packed her things, I felt a strange calm, though I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. Was this truly the end? I didn't know, but for the first time, I was willing to face whatever came next on my own terms. In that final moment, watching her walk away, I felt a shift, a moment of acceptance. Yet, there was an unmistakable sense that this journey was far from over, with consequences waiting around the corner that I couldn't yet foresee. After she left, the reality of our separation began to set in. I knew I had to protect myself, both emotionally and financially, and that meant seeking legal advice. The thought of meeting with a lawyer to discuss the end of our marriage was something I'd never expected. But here I was, walking into that office. I felt a strange mix of determination and sadness. The lawyer talked me through the steps, how to ensure my assets were secure, what the separation might look like, and how to proceed if I wanted a clean break. Each word felt surreal, like I was making decisions for someone else's life. As the days passed, I started preparing myself mentally for the changes ahead. There were practical details to address, sure, but emotionally, I was already feeling the shift. I began thinking about the future, one that didn't involve her, and how I might rebuild without the familiar life I'd shared with her. My conversations with Andrea had shown me a glimpse of the peace and satisfaction I could feel again, but taking this next step alone was another story. Still, I was ready to move forward, determined to handle this with clarity and respect, whatever it took. In those moments, as I signed papers and made decisions about the next steps, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Letting go of the life we'd built together was painful, but necessary. There was a finality in each step, a small relief in knowing that I was taking control back, bit by bit. And yet, as resolved as I was, I couldn't help but feel there were still things left unsaid, unanswered, and maybe even unresolved. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. The day she returned to pick up her things was heavier than I'd anticipated. There was no anger left, just a sense of finality hanging in the air. As she packed, though, she suddenly opened up, confessing details that stopped me cold. She admitted to more than I'd known. She'd been involved with other men, some of them parents from the school where she worked. It was a revelation that stirred a familiar ache in me, but at this point, I was more numb than anything else. Hearing her speak about her choices, it felt like she was someone I no longer recognized. I listened, absorbing her words, while a strange calmness took over. Part of me wanted answers, to understand why she'd risked so much, but I realized it wouldn't change anything. Her intentions, her need for satisfaction in ways I couldn't give, were hers to justify. I saw in her eyes a mix of regret and defiance, as if she still believed her actions were somehow excusable. I stood there watching her, but I knew I was done waiting for apologies or explanations. It was time to let go, fully and completely. As she finally left, there was an unexpected sense of relief, as though the weight I'd carried for so long had lifted. I'd mourned the relationship already, piece by piece, and now the final door had closed. For the first time, I felt free to rebuild, unburdened by the past. But there was no denying that this chapter, however painful, had changed me. I knew now that the journey wasn't just about moving on. It was about rediscovering who I was, what I wanted, and where my life could go from here. After the separation, life felt different, lighter, in ways I hadn't anticipated. I poured my energy into my career, and soon, opportunities started opening up. A promotion at work gave me a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time, reminding me that satisfaction could come from within. I decided to make a fresh start, buying a new home that truly felt like mine. Each room was a blank slate, a place to fill with new memories, new intentions, and the life I was finally ready to build on my own terms. My connection with Andrea deepened, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely seen. She wasn't filling a void. She was adding to a new chapter, one rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Our relationship was grounded in simplicity and honesty, something I hadn't realized I needed so much. With her, there was no pressure, no expectations, just a shared sense of peace. I felt like I was healing piece by piece, rediscovering the kind of connection that didn't demand more than I was willing to give. It was satisfying in ways I hadn't thought possible. Looking back, I could see how this journey had reshaped me. The heartbreak, the confusion, the feeling of betrayal. It had all forced me to confront my values and my self-worth. I was no longer bound by the past, no longer stuck in the uncertainty. Instead, I felt grounded, grateful for this chance to rebuild. This wasn't just about moving on. It was about creating a life that was true to me. As I stood in my new home, looking toward the future, I knew I was ready to embrace it fully, with intention and clarity.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.